One of the reasons I brought you here is because you have published so many books, and I know she was talking about the Plot Your workbooks, but you are a author of fantasy, urban fantasy, a lot of vampire series, but I think there's other stuff mixed in. And I think you published over 20 of these books in what looks like a 10-year period. Is that correct?
I actually published them shorter time frame. It was close to about 6 years, and then the last fiction book came out in the 7th year. And I have not done fiction work for 3 years, so I'm still working on the last vampire book. That's an 8-book series. I also have a contemporary romance book series, and I've done
so that the Mr. Wrong series. Is that it? The Mr. Wrong series.
Avoiding Mr. Right, you're talking about. Actually, that series is called The Walk on the Wild Side. Okay. It's a genre that is referred to as sugar kink, which is kind of really fun. I had to learn all about these different like niche and subgenres within writing erotic romance. So I was learning all these different things. I was like, wow, a sugar kink. I'm writing sugar kink. That is so cool. The idea is it's more like, it's not a BDSM type of story. It's normal vanilla people who decide to walk on the wild side and maybe try a little spanking, maybe try a little bondage, but you don't need a safe word. It's more about, if I tell you no, that fucking means no. So people understanding it's about you being in a monogamous relationship and taking a walk on the wild side and trying something new and different. And when I was going through Goodreads, where they had all these amazing subgenres listed for all this stuff, I found mine at the very, very bottom of like, anything that was risque, mine was way down here. It was like, you got some kink in there, but you're really more vanilla. I was like, all right, I can handle that.
Yeah. I that's what I prefer to read myself. I like that.
Yeah. The really, heavy stuff is great for some people. I'm never judged anybody on what they want to read, but it just wasn't something I wanted to write or something I wanted to read.
Right.
I'm also working on a cozy mystery series and a secondary contemporary fantasy series. So I run the genre gamut from urban fantasy to cozy mystery to fantasy mystery to combined, and then the romance, and then erotic romance.
So this is what I am fascinated with. How were you able to write all those books in a short period of time? And I have heard other authors do this. And I read a book, 2 to 10K. And it was a good book with other writing tips and such. But in the end, the reason was she started spending 8 hours a day writing, which is fantastic. But still, if you think of the process of writing a book, you have to write it, you have to edit it. And the editing process takes forever for me, I think. That I'm curious, how did you produce? Did you have a structured time? Did you?
So I found that my process evolved from the very beginning to where I am now. It has changed several times, and I think that every writer has to recognize that as their life evolves and their life changes, so does their writing. So in the beginning, I was battling some serious health issues. I had chronic Lyme disease. It took me 6 years to be able to beat it. And unfortunately, I already had lupus and I was undiagnosed. I had several autoimmune diseases. So going through lots of treatments every day. I did IV treatments. I was on 45 pills a day. Most of them made me incredibly sick. It was really difficult to manage it all. And I found that the best way I could handle it, I'm sorry if this sounds bad, was denial. Like if I knew I was sick, I knew I was really bad, but I thought to myself, like, I just cannot allow myself to wallow in this self-pity every day. I've got to have something to focus on and to do. And at this point, I had to give up my career as a real estate agent and a property manager, and I kind of fell into writing. I went to a book club one night with some friends, and after a couple glasses of wine, people were really revealing some things, and 2 of my friends admitted they were writing books. And my first semi-drunken thought was, they're no smarter than I am. How could they be writing a book and I'm not writing a book? Like, I have been an avid reader for freaking decades and I love books. How could I not be a writer? So I, in my drunken stupidity, I was like, I can totally do this. And my girlfriend, one of my girlfriends who had said she was a writer, was actually a managing editor for 3 magazines for 20 years. Oh. So she was the one who followed up with me a couple days later, and she said, hey, you had some good ideas. Are you going to write that down? I thought, like, wow, she's serious. I guess I should do this. And I just sat down and started writing. And then she came back to me a couple of days and she's like, so did you write anything? I was like, well, you know, I don't really know what I'm doing. She made me send her my work and she loved it. She said, I can't believe it. I have been struggling with writing my book for 5 years and you're freaking natural. She said, you've never had a writing class. I had writing classes in college, but so I started with this great passion of wanting to write and also wanting to live in denial about how bad my health was. So
it sounds like you also had support there from your friend, which is
she
quite
was
nice.
She was really phenomenal. She and in the beginning, I wanted her to become my writing partner so that she could help me and learn. And when she realized I really didn't know what I was doing, she's just like, yeah, I don't have time to teach you how to write. You need to take some workshops and some classes. And I did everything online. I learned workshops. I learned the craft. I knew what I was doing. I started to join a bunch of online critique groups that would help out and give you work. And I found that they were incredibly cruel. Online critique groups. Have you ever tried those? Like those people, it's almost as if
I did join one that was very good. I'll give you the name later.
I don't do them anymore. Now I just pay.
Okay. Okay.
That's the kind of thing you do. Yeah. So I was writing and then I was editing and I was doing my treatments and I was trying to stay healthy. And it was a great way to escape from what I was doing. And the first book I wrote in 6 months. And I had an...
Did you pantser it or did you plan it? First one.
I started with pantsing. The first couple of chapters I just wrote. And then when my girlfriend had said to me, she's like, okay, so what's going on? Who's the killer? And I thought like, well, shit.
I don't know yet.
I don't quite know I think I know who the killer is, but she's like, no. You can't start writing without knowing where the ending is going. I thought, all right, that makes sense. So I sat down, I think I had been about 5 to 7 chapters in, and then I outlined the entire book. And each outline was, each chapter was just 4 to 6 sentences of an outline. That's it. Just a general idea of direction. But when I sat down to write, it was a nice oh, hey, that's the action taking place. But you're pantsing the whole rest of your scene. You can't tell me 4 to 6 sentences is enough to write a 3,000 word chapter. You are making it up as you go.
Right.
But it's a general roadmap.
That's my argument with pantsering too.
Yeah. So my girlfriend told me, she read through my outline and she said, you know what? You're doing this exactly as Charles Dickens did when he wrote Great Expectations. He wrote a few sentences describing the action, and then he would sit down and write the chapter, and that segment would then be edited and then published, because it was released weekly. So she knew so much about writing that she gave me confidence that what I was doing wasn't wrong. I've met so many writers and young writers. I've worked with high schoolers for 5 years, which was telling them there's no right or wrong way to approach this. And anybody who tells you differently is lying to you and is wrong, because however you want to create is exactly right for you. Right. There should never be any rules with this, right? It's every approach is different.
I get tired of hearing you can't use adverbs. Every writer gives that tip.
Yeah, I don't get why that's a tip. I get Stephen King says
Stephen King said it. Stephen King has got, and you know what? I understand that it was probably overused, but what I always point out is open Harry Potter, the first book. I guarantee you open up a page, there is an adverb.
Yeah. So maybe what the real advice should be is everything in moderation.
Yes. I think that should be and the other thing I think was, I did read his book, and I think what he was trying to say, instead of greatly crying, let's say, or very sad, instead of saying very sad, you would say depressed. Use a word that actually fits in it instead of using an adverb, which
very quickly. Yeah, exactly. Pick a better word.
Yeah. But in some cases, the adverb just fits.
Right.
Just fits.
Right. So that's why I say moderation. And your editor will be the one to tell you, you've used very 5 times in this chapter. Or
very is not a good word to use in general, period. But
exactly.
I just couldn't think of anything. Yeah.
Or what if they exclamation points? That's another one. They'll say, you get 2 per book. Stop using. Okay, I get it. You're right. I don't. I should say he shouted rather than exclamation point.
Because I will say, with exclamation points, as a reader, I don't always see them.
Right.
So, right. Yeah, saying shouted. You're like, oh, he shouted that.
I get it. Exactly. Yeah. So I would say my process changed. In the beginning, I would work a certain amount of hours per day. And then my kids were younger. So if they had an early bedtime, maybe I'd go back to work again in the evening because I didn't want to sit around and watch television.
How many words were you getting in per day? Do you know?
Gosh, I think I was aiming more for chapters at that point, and my goal would be to try to get a chapter done in 2 days.
And how long is your chapters typically?
They were about 2,500 to 3,500 words.
That's pretty impressive.
Maybe I was doing 1,000 words a day or a little bit less, but then there'd be the days.
So that's anywhere from like an hour to about 3 hours a day?
It could be less, it could be more, because like you, I started reading how to write faster, how to write, driving music with a really steady beat. I found Brain FM was really terrific. Anything that could help me get into a zone with the flow, the words would come out faster. 5 years ago, well, actually now it's 6 years ago, when I started the writing group at the high school, I started to experiment with the kids, having them listen to different musics to see how we would write faster, what approach would be better, what size sprints would work best with the kids. So even though technically it's illegal to experiment on children, I got to do it in this like nice little controlled environment.
Not necessarily experimenting.
Oh yeah, I was just making a joke, but it was really funny. It was a great.
Just keeping you safe from those crazies who are gonna write.
It helped me to figure out what worked. Well, they were all enthusiastic about it. They knew what we were doing, that it was trying to figure out their sweet spot to create fast. So I found that we were able to write, and I would write with them, and I'd write anywhere from 800 to 1,100 words in 20 and 25 minutes.
Oh, wow. Mine's 500 in 20 minutes. Now, see, I'm pretty confident I'm dyslexic, and I sometimes wonder if I will always have a wall because of it.
Well, I upped my production even more by starting to dictate. So after.
Oh, okay. I've done dictating. I don't like it. That's just me.
Really difficult. There are some people I know who have mastered it. I'm not there yet. They have mastered it, and they'll do 8,000 words in an hour. So, I mean, when you start to think about
that makes so much more sense, because I knew somebody who was doing like 10,000 words. I thought in an hour, and I'm like, how did you do that with a full-time job? But that makes so much more sense.
Is the secret weapon key to everyone who is producing quickly.
Now, do they take with that dragon speak, or do they use?
There's several different ones that you can try. So AWS, Amazon Web Services, they offer a transcription service as well. It's incredibly cheap. It's like $2 an hour, and it will take your recording that you upload, and it will then put it into a file. The problem with that is it does not recognize the same type of punctuation commands that you put in when you're used to dragon dictation. Okay. I've also had some friends who've had great success with the Google products to be able to do speaking on the phone and then have it go through to a program.
I've done Google and I've done Word.
Yeah, Word, I'm not really a big fan of, but I've heard other people have had great success with it. So I do use Dragon, and I use Dragon with the professional ones so that I'm able to just transcribe into a voice recording. And that means I can do it while I'm walking. I can do it while I'm relaxing. I can dictate.
Wow.
And then it will transcribe the whole recording later. And the nice part is if you feel like you're in the flow and you don't have any idea how much you wrote, and then you get that whole transcription back and you're like, oh, 2,500 words. Oh my God, that was amazing. And you feel pumped up and excited about it. It's really great.
I might try that for Nano this year.
It's worth a shot. You have to prep more. So I started to, like I said, how your processes change. I started with designing something called a dictation outline sheet, where it was what we would call micro outlining. You would take your general idea of maybe a bullet point list of what you wanted to cover and how your scenes were going to go, or you would take your 4 to 6 sentence outline for your chapter, and then you would sit for a while and you'd think about it and you'd expand upon it. And the prompts on the dictation page, the micro outlining sheet, would prompt you on what's my overall emotion in this scene? Here I am, I wrote the damn thing and I'm struggling with what it says. It says things like not just emotion, but imagery and setting. Do I have any character reveals in this scene? What's my basic summary of the information I want to convey? And now, are there any specific details that I have to incorporate in? So me expanding on what I wanted to do in that scene, in that chapter, when I sat down to write, and or dictate, it flowed much faster.
Wow.
So I realized it was time well spent. So that's what I meant by your process from the beginning changes to after you've been doing this for a really long time. When I was finally cured from Lyme and I then got my lupus into remission, what I found out was I could not sit at the computer for a long period of time anymore. I had to get up and move. I had to be doing things because I have rheumatoid arthritis. I would have incredible pain. My hands would start swelling. I couldn't do it. So when I switched and I started working with nonfiction, it was because I was physically able to make products at my house. I make all these notebooks myself. Everything that's sold is handmade by me at my house. So it enabled me to do another part-time job that was more physical, and I was moving and I wasn't so sedentary all the time because I had to start moving more. Like you said, 8 hours at a desk was killing me. It was way too much. So now
she's even said that authors even mentioned it, like after 8 hours of this, she comes out into the sunlight as if she's kind of drunk. Yeah. And I was like,
I had to start to balance my health with my creating and with my work. If I didn't, there was going to be no more work. The doctor was very plain. Keep on this path and you're not going to live much longer. So it was a real wake-up call. So I had to keep changing. And that meant creating tools to help me produce better and to help me write better. And even though I still struggle with dictation, I dictated a novella. It turned out pretty good. I still have to do some editing on it. And I'm working on my current novel. And because this is the last novel in a long series, I think I'm much harder on myself with the dictation. That if I'm not really certain about where the scene is going or what I'm doing, it really tends to lock me up. And if I want to go back to my old ways of sitting at the keyboard and typing, I know I can write better that way, but I'm also going to destroy my body if I do it. So this last book has been a challenge.
So I understand that you use dictation now to write your book, and I get that. But when you edit, do you, because even if you send it to an editor, I'm assuming you go through it at least once.
So I use, have you heard of a Pro Writing Aid?
Yes, I have actually. I haven't used it, but I've heard of it.
I've used a few. There's Grammarly, there's AutoCrit, there's Pro Writing Aid.
Grammarly I've used. I like Grammarly.
So
Word has gotten better.
So definitely try AutoCrit and definitely try Pro Writing Aid, because after I tried those two, I realized I didn't care for Grammarly as much.
I got to write those down and I'll put it in the description of the YouTube
channel. AutoCrit is AUTOCRIT.com. And the other one is ProWritingAid.com. So now I have a subscription to Pro Writing Aid. I like that the best. Of course, you're right. I do edit and revise on my own with no additional software or anything.
That's different, though. I find editing is not as taxing on the mind, and yeah.
It depends on how bad it is, right? There are some chapters that seem to just smooth like silk, and others I'm like, was I drunk? What the hell is that? So some need a lot more work than others.
Yes, that's true.
So I would do a lot of work myself on it. Probably I've gone over to that point 5 to 7 times before I even put it into Pro Writing Aid. And then from Pro Writing Aid, it'll help me see the things that I am blind to. And then at that point, I'd go through it again, and then it would go to an actual editor that I paid for.
Okay. Wow.
So it's a long process.
Yeah. Now, I also was astonished. What you told me is you have 600 beta readers. Am I right?
I used to have
right. You don't do the fantasy as much.
Well, I used to have somewhere between 400 and 600. It would range. So that's why I have so many reviews on my earlier books, was because I had such a vibrant review team that I had cultivated. These are people that I got to know on Facebook. So you would hear a lot of writers talk to you about, don't post your work publicly before it's published. You have to worry about people stealing your work. And, what about copyright? All that's bullshit. The moment you write it, it's copyrighted. Whether it's in your computer or your phone, it's copyrighted. The big deal is, do I want to go after somebody if they were to try to steal it? Right. You have to remind yourself that, number one, every idea is already thought of. Every idea has already.
I disagree, but I'm not going to go into that.
My point here is it comes to execution. Whether I have a green plants that can now become, I can't even make something up on the fly and make it sound intelligent, but like green plants that are now able to sustain us, that we can sleep in a bed at our house, whatever. Right. Somebody else has thought of that same idea, but if the execution is better, how many vampire books are out there, for crying out loud? How many? thousands
Well,
of vampire
you're writing vampire. I still disagree, but what I'm curious about is, do you release the entire book to your beta readers, or do you just give them a portion of it?
So I actually approached this as two different ways. I had alpha readers and I had beta readers. So the alpha readers were reading the books as I wrote them live in a Facebook group before an editor saw them. Now that did not mean that I did not personally edit it. I edited it. It had gone through a pro writing aid or some type of editing software. It wasn't shit, but it would be before I paid someone. So I would put it up and they were my alpha readers. They read it first. They were in that group, and that group would be under 200. It wasn't a huge group. And sometimes I would even scale it back. There were times I had issues with some crazy readers that became stalkers. And then my next group, I would cull the herd and make it even smaller. So it would gradually come from 200 down to like 75. So those alpha readers.
And they were aware that these were not fully.
Oh, they knew they weren't edited. Okay. And they also knew I would give them feedback ahead of time and tell them, I don't want you to point out my spelling errors. I don't care if I missed a fucking comma. I don't care if like this is, what I want to know is flow, pacing. Does it make sense? Did any moment pull you out? Any moment that was confusing that the reader has to actually hesitate and either look up the word or reread the sentence, that means I need to do my job better. Pick a better word, reword the sentence better. But if they're going to come to me and say like, you used the wrong word here, or this would be better with a comma, shut up. That's not what I need. I have an editor.
You're looking for readers, not writers who are being critical.
I want a reader. I want somebody who can tell me this made sense. This confused me. The flow and pacing was great. I got to the end of the chapter and I want to keep reading. That's what I need.
That's where I had trouble with writing circles as well, is they get too critical.
Exactly. And that's why I don't use critiques with writers anymore. Are you my target audience? Are you my reader? Do you exclusively read vampire books freaking 5 days a week? And if you don't, then don't read my book because you're not going to help me.
There's also other issues with going to writers for critiques, because I also think there's like this jealousy issue sometimes, and there's other issues.
The writer that I said that helped me in the very beginning, she was still struggling with her first book after I had already finished my first book and landed my agent, and then had feelers out for people already wanting to buy it. So
impressive.
Impressive. Thank you. But I also feel it's a journey for everybody, right? It's always difficult for people. That agent that I got, she was great, but she eventually could not sell my book. So when she became my agent and she already knew that I wanted to self-publish, this was time frame when nobody was self-publishing. This was 2009. And so I had already, like I said, I had an extensive marketing and sales background. I had already owned a property management company that was successful before I got sick. So I knew how to run my own small business. And when I started to understand what writers were giving away to publishers, I was like, wait a minute, I wrote it. How am I going to only make 10% on the cover price? This is unreal. So I started my own company, and then I landed an agent. And I told her, you have 6 months to sell the book. If you can't sell it in 6 months, I'm going to publish it myself. And she was like, completely understand.
Now, when you say sell it, you mean sell it to a publisher, or sell it?
Yeah, she can sell it to a publisher within 6 months. I was not going to have that sitting unnecessarily long. I was already 3/4 of the way through the second book. Right. So if I already had the second book almost ready to go, the first one wasn't even published yet. Right. So I knew I had to do something, and that's why I started self-publishing. I think it was my 5th title that was traditionally published.
I have a question, because you write series. Someone told me series really sell when you finish the series.
I think it depends. There are readers that are adamant of, I do not want to start a series unless I can power through and read all of them. But then there are others that are, let's face it, there are some really prolific writers out there who've been working on the same series for 10 and 15 years, and they've got 19 to 25 books out in one series. Because
Someone,
Hamilton, her books just continue on. Jennifer Eastep is a friend of mine. She also, acquaintance of mine. She also has a whole bunch of books in one series.
Ivanovich also, but those are they can be read as standalones.
Well, that's the difference is, that you can write a series that is standalone
I wouldn't even call them a series almost.
Well, they are. They're a series.
I know they're called that, but I almost think they shouldn't be.
Yeah, I guess I can see your point with that.
Because then you look at the Divergent series, you kind of need to read
All of
hear the whole story, you need to read all of them.
right.
Whereas like Ivanovich can be, you could pick anyone out of the series and its own
You could
story.
almost say the same thing about Harry Potter, because when you think about it, each one is a standalone adventure, but there is a story arc that goes over
all 7.
but each one has an individual standalone story.
Right.
So
See, that to me is still a series though, whereas Ivanovich is, other than the romantic interest, which, come on, let's face it, that's not a huge.
Pick a guy and marry him, for crying out loud.
I enjoyed that, but it's not
After 20 books,
strong. I thought she did end up marrying one of them, but that's another story.
Okay, good, because I stopped reading after like I think about 20 books.
I think she married not the other guy, the high school one. I forget his name.
Joe Morelli.
Yes, Joe Morelli.
Yeah. You married him? Okay, good. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
Anyway, the idea is you can have a series that has a continuing one storyline plot that you actually have to read all of them to finish it, or you can also have a series that has standalone stories within the series, but you have characters and world that goes throughout all of the stories in the series, and you also have one overlying story arc, one major problem or theme that you see as a subplot from books 1, 2, 3, 4. The subplot carries through.
Yeah.
So that's what my series is. Okay. My vampire series is done that way, where there's a hint of her past in the first book, but it's a standalone. Mm-hmm. We learn more in the second book, and that past comes back to haunt her. Mm-hmm. And then you start to realize that the past she's hoping to forget that comes back to haunt her becomes a larger problem that then becomes an issue they have to address in later books. And now the last book is finally wrapping up everything. But every single book had a standalone adventure that either continued the main story arc, but also had a subplot in there that was finished in that story.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I think of as a series. Whereas I know the other one's a series too, but I feel as if somebody's going to have to come up with a term that separates the two. Yeah.
Maybe a standalone series or a standalone within the series. I don't know. You're right. We do need a better name. Something.
Yeah. Because I love the cozy mysteries, but almost every cozy mystery I read can be a standalone.
Yes, and that's what mine is. Mine's going to be cozy mystery series standalones.
Where same character. You might learn something new about the character, but you could go on forever with Agatha Raisin's my favorite.
I love those. They're real. I just love mysteries. They're fun.
Yeah. But I was curious what you how you felt your series sold as a book. I was sitting next to a woman in a craft show once who was selling her books, and what I was astonished by, she had like 4 books, and she would have people come up and they would buy all 4 of them.
Oh yeah,
like, you didn't even test this author out. You don't even know if they're good.
Sometimes people buy based on the covers alone or the concept. If they meet you, they love the cover, and they hear a little bit about you from, like, I'll call it an elevator pitch. You just basically telling them the overall concept. Sometimes I would be incredibly brief, because I knew by looking at people when I did these signings whether or not they'd be open to what I was writing. Because I write sex. And if I wasn't going to sell that to a guy who came up looking for a vampire book, but I knew I could sell it to a woman. Right. So if I was really kind of lighthearted and I was just funny about it, and I'd say like, oh, vampires, werewolves, and sex. Oh my, like they would kind of, oh, this is totally up my alley. And they would grab all the books because I was kind of lighthearted about it. But I let them know right up front, like, there's going to be adventure, there's mystery, there's a lot of violence, but there's also sex. And I do have about a 20% male readership, which always blows me away. I never really kind of expect that. But
humans are never black and white.
Nobody's cut and dry. Exactly.
Nobody's cut and dry. That's a better way to put it.
Someone's going to really like to read. So it wasn't nice of me to say I could judge and pick people out, but you could also tell by who had really big bags of books and if they had a t-shirt on.
And you know, your typical one was the female. I agree with that. Was your female reader. So
voracious reader. So if they found something they liked, and a lot of times too, if they were coming to these events and they had money to spend, I don't know about you, but I don't have any vices. Like, I dye my own hair. I don't go to a salon. I don't do my nails. I don't drink. I don't have a shoe collection. It was books for me. So my husband understood in the beginning. This was before e-readers were
a thing. A craft show I was at, though.
Oh, okay. My point was, like, a voracious reader has the budget for it. I would spend $250 a month on books.
Oh, wow.
My husband never batted an eye. He's like, well, I shopped at Target, for crying out loud, and Costco for my clothing. Is he going to give me a hard time that I want to buy books? No, he's
See,
not.
I still buy used books.
Well, yeah, I bought used books as well. When they had
$250 of used books.
Oh, fantasy books. I found that some fantasy series would be out of print and I could only find them. But I mean, now ebooks, it's terrific. Everything is available. But when you would go to those events with all these readers, some of them would be like my old way. They had a budget. They wanted to support authors. And if you're at a craft fair and all of a sudden you see somebody who's selling books and you're just like, oh, I came thinking I'd find a wreath, but look at these amazing books. This is awesome. And they come home with books and they're thrilled.
Yeah, I was astonished that I would say more than probably 60 to 70% of the people who bought books from her bought the whole series. And I was,
oh yeah, good for her. Yep.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was just, she, to me, is an untested author. I remember purchasing a book. I went to this thing. She did Cozy Mysteries. She had a publisher. She was writing about Loudoun County, the Cozy Mystery, which I thought was interesting. I forget the author's name. But I purchased a book, I had her sign it, and I brought it home and I read it and I went, this is crap.
Oh.
So I don't get when people can buy the whole series. But hey, if I have a series, if you want to buy my series.
Yeah, there you go. Go for it. I'm at the point now where when I go to these events, even if I don't sell, actually, and I can't say I go to these events because I haven't gone to any in a few years, but when I went to all these events, I would buy all books in my genre from other authors to support them, and I would never read them. I would give them away to my readers because they're signed. So if they're signed, I would make a giveaway contest with my readers, and it would then be supporting those authors by granting them a new readership and a new audience, but also promoting them through the giveaway. Mm-hmm. And if I wanted to read the book later, like if I flipped through it and I thought it was good, I'd go buy it on the e-reader. I'd buy an ebook because I physically can't stand holding a paperback book in the bathtub anymore. Oh. I'm so paranoid I'm going to drop it in the tub or it gets heavy after a while that I've just completely switched to ebooks and I love it.
Yeah, my husband liked the ebooks. I still like the paper. My kids say, I feel like when I have a book, I feel like I own it. And that's why they like it.
That's my Kindle.
Yeah, that's my husband's.
It weighs less than my phone.
He is the ink.
This is
the ink.
The Oasis. This is the Kindle e-reader of the Kindle Oasis, and it hooks into the cover. That's a battery, but when you take it, it's lightweight. Okay. And at 4 ounces. Yeah. In the bathtub, that's awesome. Yeah. And I in the hot tub, take it everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he loves his e-reader too. I only get it when I can find, like I'm part of a book club and the book was $1.49. I was like, I'll take e-reader this time around.
Yeah.
But otherwise I prefer, I don't read in the bathtub, so that probably helps.
I probably read like 2 hours a day in the bathtub.
Oh, wow.
Maybe an hour and a half, but yeah, definitely.
I'd be all pruny.
I soak for my rheumatoid arthritis in Epsom.
Oh, okay. So, well, that makes sense.
To keep me off RA medication. And I take no rheumatoid arthritis drugs. So if it means I got to soak in the bathtub every day for an hour and a half, yay, I get to read a book.
You get to read, yeah. I would do that too. And like you said, 4 ounces, I would do that. His e-reader, what I like, he has that e-ink. Mm-hmm. So it's a beautiful... There's no glare. There's no.
Oh yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a nice product, and it's great for traveling too because you can bring 50 books.
That's what mine looks like right now.
Ah.
Yeah, it's super color. It's the e-ink with the frontlit screen. It's really nice.
I'm glad they kept that e-ink too. When they came out with that Fire, I went, oh, but the e-ink is nice.
That's like just holding a great big phone or a tablet. Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I have a Fire because somebody gave it to me, but the e-ink, he has an e-ink and I like reading from that too.
One of the great ways to be able to build up a good readership is to be able to, on your newsletter list is to run giveaways. If you ever see sales where they're giving away the Kindle Fire for like $47 or $35, if you have an extensive Kindle library, what I've done is I've bought one. I've loaded it with my 700 or 1,000 books on my account, and then I give it to a reader. And I tell the reader, if you want to read my library, you cannot register the Kindle on your account because the moment you register the Kindle on your account, it wipes all the books out.
Okay.
So basically I'm lending them my library until they get tired of reading it. Eventually they want to register the device on their own and buy a new book, a latest author book that came out. And once they do that, it erases the whole library, and they know that. So I tell them ahead of time.
That is cool.
You're basically able to read my free books as long as you want. And then you have to,
That is a cool idea.
Yeah, it worked out nice. And it's great giveaways. They're inexpensive, and you're helping to, get people to read.
Yep. Yeah. And getting your name out there by doing the sweepstakes. And
The giveaways. Really
have
good.
you ever done the Nook? Do you ever go on to Barnes?
My books are on there. And in the very beginning, I bought different devices because I wanted to make sure I understand when I was formatting things on my own, how they looked on different devices.
Yeah.
But then they came up with ways for you to be able to preview things on the computer screen without you having to have the physical device. So no, I don't have a Nook now. I just have a Kindle.
Do you publish on the Nook?
Yes, I publish everywhere. Publish wide.
Okay. Publish wide, yeah.
I have tried Kindle Unlimited, and the whole subscription model works for a lot of great authors. I did not have good luck with it. I might try it again with a series that I only release in KU, but for now my stuff's all wide. And
I did wide for my first book. My second book I did just for Kindle. I did better.
Yeah.
And I should release it wide, but I just haven't gotten around to it. But
I've read so many different things where some say that a new title does better in KU rather than you packaging an old title. If you package an old title with a new ISBN number or a new cover or anything else, it doesn't do as well as a brand new book. So it's all these different ins and outs. It feels like it's really hard to sell books nowadays and to figure out what the best approach it is. It's always changing.
Yeah.
It's
It's a tough market right now.
It is.
I was talking to one of the women, Amanda White, who I interviewed, and she said, it's fantastic. We get all these people who we wouldn't have gotten to see because of the agents, and the publishers get to decide. I said, yes, but it's harder to make a living off of it because there's so many people out there.
Well, and then like you said, once everyone can publish, everyone does publish. And
Yes.
that doesn't mean that everyone should publish.
We mentioned that too. Yeah.
If they're just not ready to be out there, they shouldn't be. And that's the hard part is, like you said, you bought that woman's book to support her and you read it and realized like, ooh, not quite.
Yeah.
Not quite yet.
Not quite. I heard somebody say to me once, only the Brits can do cozy mystery. I was like,
I don't agree.
I like Ivanovich's books.
Yeah.
She's cozy mystery to me.
Yeah, I think that falls as cozy mystery, quirky characters, quirky settings, all of it's the same.
I think it has to do with the death. If the death isn't gruesome, it's just, okay, here's the death. I mean, it can be a little bit, but they don't go into it. So
it's not a forensic or true crime or exactly. But there actually are criteria that you need to hit for it to be a cozy mystery.
Right.
That is one of them. The death is not too graphic and not too.
That's it. Not too graphic. And it's more about the solving of it from an amateur. And that's exactly what Ivanovich did. I can only think of her right now. I know I've read others, but I do read a lot of British cozy mysteries. But that is pretty much all I've been asking for. I don't know what.
There were some other things that you wanted to cover about productivity, or am I missing? I just wanted to make sure we covered what you wanted to cover.
I really wanted to hear your work ethic of how you got it all out. And from what I got from this is that you write every day, even when I'm assuming, I say this a lot, you write even when you're not inspired.
Yes.
Is that right? Yes.
Yes. So I used to write more frequently than I am right now. Helping other writers, doing Plot Your Work and Plot Your Book, unfortunately with the quarantine and the pandemic has absolutely exploded, where I'm getting so many orders in. I had to shut down shops. I couldn't keep up with what was going on. Right. So my little part-time gig turned into full-time, and the money was great, but then I had no life. So I need to get back to my writing, and that's where it was. I have to work out a balance. I have to somehow scale back this part-time business so that it's back to part-time, so that I can actually get back to writing more. Previously, when I was producing a lot of books, I wrote at one point I wrote and published 5 titles in 15 months. And it just about killed me. It was
Wow.
incredibly difficult. I was burnt out. I didn't care if I ever wrote again. I was like, I just cannot do this. I didn't care what the money was. I was a nervous wreck. And that was when my doctor sat me down and was like, you cannot keep doing this if you want to keep living. So
I tell you, CJ, from what I get from you, from the businesses you had before and the writing, you are a very organized person, a very go-getter, very hyper-focused, and very determined, which is all cool. But I must admit, this does sound like it's probably contributing to your illness. So you just scale it back just a little bit. You'll still be highly successful, and yet, I mean, not that you aren't already, you are, but it does sound like that hyper-focus.
It was one of those things where my family has joked with me for years about like, the only reason why I haven't succeeded in world domination is because of my health. That obviously it was balanced where I
could see that.
If not, I would take over the world. So
I always say that. My dad used to say, I said, Dad, I want something. And he'd say, I'll give you the world, Joanne. I was like, no, that's too much work.
Yeah, I don't want my slice of it. Just a little bitty corner of it. And you're right. I did push myself too hard. I did work too hard. I had to find a balance. And balance is very important for you to be able to stay in this long term. I've got friends that
you sound like you're still doing well and you're learning this balance. I'm getting from you, you're hyper-focused, very organized, very determined, which is, my hat's off to you.
It's hard. But at the same time, when your health tells you you can't do it and you can't keep going, no matter what your drive and ambition is, you have to listen. You have to scale back.
And it's good that you recognize that. Not everyone would.
Yeah, well, it was really bad. And that many pills each day and IV treatments twice a week.
Oh.
At one point, my medical bills were almost $5,000 a month out of pocket.
Oh.
So, I mean.
Have you heard of Headspace?
It's a meditative app, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. I should check that out.
I actually do try to work on meditation and yoga. Yoga has been really helpful for me. It's kind of
the guy who discovered Headspace did a TED Talk. I'll try to send you a link. This is separate from, but he did a very interesting about life, and he ended up in a Buddhist monastery. But anyway,
better than in the ground, that's for sure.
Now he had some interesting perspectives on life, and yes, you should
slow down and enjoy life.
Slow down and enjoy life. Yeah.
Yeah. And my first passion before writing was home.
And yet I'm still jealous that you have over 20 books. So let's go with that too. Let that be said.
Balance. Yeah. It's definitely a balance. It's really hard.
Yeah. It was a pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this interview with CJ Ellisson. If you did, please let me know in the comments. And as always, like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to click that bell next to the subscribe button to be notified that there is a new video up. And join us each Wednesday for another interview that helps the writer.